The Nevada desert stretched endlessly under a blistering sun, its dunes and craggy outcrops unbroken by life, or so it seemed. In the early hours of that fateful day 5 years ago, Emma Carter, a rising star in the Air Force, climbed into the cockpit of her sleek training jet. Her mind was sharp, her nerves steady, the epitome of calm in a storm of adrenaline. She had a routine flight scheduled, just another test mission. But something in the air that day felt different, heavier somehow, as if the world itself held its breath. Her family would later recall the last words she sent, a casual text to her sister, "Clear skies, be back soon." That casual certainty would haunt them forever. She was gone within moments, radar screens went dark, and all attempts to locate her ended in failure. Search teams combed the desert for weeks. The media labeled it a tragic accident. Her body was never found. And then, heartbreakingly, after months of uncertainty, she was declared dead. Memorials were held with the full ceremonial honors of a fallen officer. A folded flag, a polished brass plaque, a hollow space at the dinner table where she had always sat. Her medals, her ribbons, the accolades she had earned with sweat and precision, all became relics of a life snatched away. Her name, once a symbol of bright promise in military aviation circles, became etched into history as a story of loss and tragedy. But somewhere in the vast, desolate expanse of Nevada, Emma was alive. She had survived. How she could barely understand herself. Memory of the crash was fragmented, like shards of glass threatening to cut deeper with every recollection. One moment she had been piloting her jet, checking altitudes, instruments, coordinates. The next, a violent jolt threw her into darkness. She awoke days later, bruised, dehydrated, and disoriented, in a makeshift shelter that was part survivalist hideout, part secret research outpost. Someone or something had found her and kept her alive, for reasons she didn't yet understand. The first nights were the hardest. The desert was merciless, scorching by day, freezing by night, and utterly silent except for the distant whistle of wind against sand and rock. She learned to move without being seen, to ration food and water, and to endure the suffocating isolation. Every night she stared at the stars, remembering the life that had been ripped away, the family, the Air Force, the friends who had mourned her. Her mind became her companion, her fears a constant shad. And yet even in this torment a spark of defiance kindled. She would survive, somehow. Years passed, marked only by the rhythm of the desert sun and the occasional distant hum of military aircraft overhead. Emma trained herself relentlessly. Injuries healed, muscles strengthened, reflexes sharpened. She studied navigation, survival, and communications through manuals salvaged from abandoned crates and the scraps of technology that littered the hidden facility. Her mind became a fortress, and within that fortress she plotted her return, not just to life, but to a world that had written her off as dead. Then came the day that changed everything. The wind had shifted, carrying with it a familiar vibration, a resonance deep in her bones. Engines, she froze. The sound was distant but unmistakable, the roar of jet turbines cutting through the sky. A fleet of F-22s, her peers and successors, performing routine patrols high above the desert floor. The pulse of the engines resonated with memories she thought were long buried, the feel of the cockpit, the rush of altitude, the clarity of flight. It ignited something dangerous and beautiful in her chest, hope. Emma moved swiftly to a vantage point, her eyes scanning the sky, heart hammering. The desert was vast, but radar, she knew, could detect her if she transmitted carelessly. Still, she needed them to hear her, needed them to recognize the voice, the call sign that had once struck fear and admiration into every officer's heart. Hands steady despite the adrenaline, she activated a hidden transmitter, its signal weak but clear. She waited tense, calculating as the distant jets approached. The first voice crackled over the radio. "This is Phoenix 6-7. Identify yourself." Emma swallowed hard. The call sign was hers, the one that had been retired in her supposed death. Her lips parted, voice steady, commanding, yet carrying the weight of years spent in silence. "This is Phoenix 6-7. I'm alive. I need assistance immediately." There was a pause, then static, then the unmistakable shock in the response. Phoenix 6-7, that's impossible. Her pulse raced. The pilots were airborne legends, trained to react without hesitation, but even they were frozen in disbelief. A soldier declared dead 5 years ago, guiding a rescue mission from the shadows. The irony was almost cruel. Emma allowed herself a small, grim smile, though it faded as she remembered the other crisis awaiting her. A stricken aircraft, hundreds of miles away, in the hands of a pilot struggling against death. Survival was no longer enough. She had to act. As the F-22s adjusted their course, curious and cautious, Emma realized that returning to the world wouldn't be simple. Every step would be watched, every move questioned. She had survived against impossible odds, but the questions loomed larger. Who had saved her? Why had she been hidden? And most urgently, how could she save the pilot whose life now depended on her skill, knowledge, and courage? Skills honed in secret, sharpened by isolation, and ready to be unleashed on a world that had thought her dead. Her eyes flicked to the horizon where the faint glint of metal reflected sunlight. Somewhere beyond those dunes, the mission began. She could feel it in her bones. This was her moment, her return. But the desert had taught her patience, calculation, and the art of waiting. One wrong move could end everything. And still, she took a deep breath, lifted her hand over the transmitter, and sent the signal that would change everything. Above, the F-22s adjusted their flight paths, their pilots' faces hardening with disbelief and awe. Below, the desert remained silent, keeping its secrets tightly in its grasp. Emma's voice carried over the comms once more, unwavering, defiant, alive. "This is Phoenix 6-7. Copy that. I'm here." For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. The world that had declared her dead 5 years ago would soon learn the truth. But before that truth could fully emerge, the tension crackled in the air like electricity. Somewhere unseen, a shadow moved. Someone was watching. And somewhere far below, a life hung in the balance, waiting for her command. The desert, the sky, and the legacy of a fallen soldier now alive were all converging. And in that convergence, Emma felt it. The thrill of survival, the weight of secrecy, and the inevitability of a return no one, not even the F-22 pilots above, would ever forget. The engines roared closer, the sun blazed mercilessly, and Emma whispered under her breath, a vow to herself, to the lost years, to the family who mourned her, and to the pilot struggling above. "I'm coming, and nothing will stop me." The tension was electric. The world had believed she was dead, but Emma Carter, Phoenix 6-7, was very much alive. And the storm she was above the sky above the Nevada desert was a flawless blue, deceptively calm, as Air Force Captain Alex Monroe guided his aircraft through the routine morning patrol. A decorated pilot with years of combat experience, he prided himself on precision, control, and composure under pressure. But this day would test him in ways no training ever could. Mid-flight, a sudden, excruciating pain gripped his chest. It was sharp, searing, and unlike anything he'd felt before. Sweat stung his eyes as his hands trembled over the controls. His vision blurred, the instruments on the dashboard dancing in a dizzying, chaotic rhythm. He tried to radio for help, but the words caught in his throat. The cockpit, normally his domain, now felt like a cage closing in. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, unbroken by roads, towns, or signs of civilization. Every second counted. Alex's mind raced, cycling through training, emergency protocols, and worst-case scenarios, but none of it prepared him for the collapse of his own body. He pressed his communicator, voice cracking, but the signal was weak. Panic, a foreign and unwelcome visitor, seeped in. "Control, Mayday engine," he rasped, voice trembling. Alarms blared across the cabin, warning lights flashing a violent red. The co-pilot, sensing the gravity of the situation, lunged forward, but it was too late. Alex slumped over the yoke, the aircraft tilting dangerously toward the unforgiving desert below. High above, F-22s on routine patrol detected the emergency almost instantaneously. Pilots in the lead fighter exchanged terse words, their eyes scanning their screens in disbelief. "That's Captain Monroe, he's losing it," one muttered, voice tight with tension. They knew the man personally, respected his skill, and understood the stakes. If he didn't regain control, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for him, but for every life aboard the plane and on the ground below. Meanwhile, in the desert below, Emma Carter, Phoenix 6-7, crouched behind a jagged rock outcrop, eyes fixed on the approaching F-22s. She had waited for this moment, hunting herself for years in silence. The roar of the engine stirred something deep within her, recognition, urgency, and a spark of hope. But even as she keyed her transmitter, her pulse quickened. This wasn't a drill. A life hung in the balance, and she was the only one who could guide it back from the edge. Static crackled over the radio. Unidentified distress who? Emma cut in, voice steady, commanding. Phoenix 6-7, I copy. I'm here to assist. There was a stunned pause on the other end. F-22 pilots, trained to react instantly, hesitated, eyes widening as the impossible registered. This was the call sign of someone officially declared dead 5 years ago. Copy that. One pilot whispered into his headset, disbelief lacing every word. Phoenix is alive. Emma's heart pounded, but her voice remained unwavering. The aircraft is unstable. I need visual confirmation. I'll guide you. Keep him alive. Can you manage that? Affirmative, the lead pilot responded, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. But you're supposed to be. I'm not dead. Focus, Emma snapped, her years of isolation and survival crystallizing into a single point of determination. The F-22s adjusted formation, flying low to the desert floor, scanning for the stricken aircraft. Every pilot knew the odds were slim. The terrain was unforgiving, the aircraft damaged, and the pilot's condition critical. One wrong maneuver and the aircraft would be lost forever. Inside the cockpit, Alex Monroe's strength was ebbing fast. His fingers struggled to maintain grip on the yoke. His mind flashed through memories, family dinners, the pride of service, the weight of command. For a brief moment, despair threatened to overwhelm him. And then a voice cut through the haze, calm, sharp, unmistakable. Captain Monroe, listen to me. You're not alone. Take my instructions exactly as I say. Trust me. The words, steady and authoritative, grounded him. He blinked, trying to focus. There was no time to process the impossibility, no room for skepticism. Survival demanded action, not doubt. Slowly, he nodded, letting the instructions guide him through the pain, the panic, the spiraling descent. Emma's directions were precise, surgical, each command slicing through the chaos of the cockpit. Adjust your throttle by 10%. Bank 30 degrees right. Steady, steady. Her voice was calm, almost detached, yet laced with urgency. Alex followed, muscles straining, sweat stinging his eyes, the plane's vibrations resonating through his bones. The F-22 pilots flanked the descending jet, their formations protective, alert. They were guardians in the sky, shadows of authority and precision, guided by a legend reborn. And as the aircraft began to stabilize under Emma's guidance, a collective breath seemed to release from everyone in the airspace. Yet the danger wasn't over. Every second still counted. The engines groaned, the aircraft shuddered, and the desert approached with unforgiving speed. Back in the hidden facility, Emma's eyes flicked to the distant mountains where the pilot's trajectory would meet the terrain. Calculations ran in her head at lightning speed. Altitude, wind, descent rate, emergency landing zones. Every choice mattered. One misjudgment could shatter the fragile thread of survival she had woven over the past 5 years. Phoenix 6-7, you're real, the lead F-22 pilot whispered, a mix of awe and fear. Emma didn't answer. Focus was all that mattered. Alex, guided by her calm authority, began to regain control. The plane leveled, then ascended slightly, stabilizing enough to buy precious minutes. He could feel it, hope returning, fragile but real. His breathing, though ragged, began to normalize, and the haze of collapse lifted just enough for him to comprehend the situation. Someone who shouldn't exist was saving him. Someone dead, or at least declared so, was keeping him alive. But even as relief began to seep in, tension rippled through the air. Emergency landing zones were still miles away. Radar had detected unusual readings near the approach path. Ground crews scrambled, unsure of what to expect. And Emma, despite her confidence, couldn't ignore the shadow trailing the stricken pilot. Someone somewhere had been monitoring her for years, and now they were awake. The radio crackled again, and Emma's voice cut sharply through the static. "Captain Monroe, listen carefully. You're approaching critical altitude. Follow my instructions without deviation. I will guide you through this, but you must trust me completely." "Yes, yes," Alex gasped, fingers tightening on the controls. The F-22 pilots flanked him, coordinating silently, adjusting positions to ensure safety, their eyes darting between radar screens, aircraft, and the horizon. The world below seemed to hold its breath. The desert stretched into infinity, the mountains casting long shadows that threatened to swallow the aircraft whole. Every moment was a razor's edge, every breath a gamble with fate. Yet above the chaos, a connection had formed, a link between the fallen and the survivor, between life and death, between the impossible past and the precarious present. And then a shadow flickered on the radar, something approaching fast, unmarked, unknown. Emma's eyes narrowed. It wasn't just about saving the pilot anymore. There was someone watching, someone who had waited for this moment. And now the stakes had risen higher than anyone could imagine. The engines groaned, the pilot's strength waned, and the desert below raced up to meet them. Emma's voice, calm and unwavering, cut through the tension like steel. "Brace yourself. This is the moment that will decide everything. Trust me." For the first time in 5 years, Emma felt the rush of the world alive around her. Chaos, danger, responsibility, and hope, all colliding into a single heartbeat. The stricken pilot, the F-22 Guardians, the shadow in the sky, they were all pieces of a puzzle she was uniquely destined to solve. And as the aircraft descended faster, the desert spreading wide below, the suspense became almost unbearable. The impossible was happening. A pilot, moments from collapse, was being saved by someone officially dead. The world above and below was about to witness the unthinkable. And yet the final outcome, the fate of Alex Monroe, and the revelation of Phoenix 6-7's survival remained just out of reach. A single frozen moment suspended in the sky, and in that pause the desert seemed to whisper a warning. Survival was not enough. The storm was only beginning. The cockpit was chaos. Alarms screamed, warning lights flashed like strobe signals, and the desert below surged closer with every heartbeat. Captain Alex Monroe's chest still burned with pain, his fingers trembling over the controls, but now there was a new force guiding him. A voice, sharp and unmistakable, cutting through the panic like a scalpel. "Phoenix 6-7, do you copy?" The words hit Alex like a thunderclap. The call sign, the one he had memorized from training exercises, drills, and debriefings, belonged to someone officially declared dead 5 years ago. A woman whose disappearance had haunted military aviation circles. The pilots in the F-22s flanking his plane exchanged rapid, bewildered glances, and even through the static, the disbelief was palpable. "Yes, yes, I copy," Alex gasped, his voice trembling. Who is this?" There was no hesitation, no faltering, only the calm authority that had made her one of the Air Force's most respected pilots. "Captain Monroe," the voice said, smooth, precise, unwavering. "This is Phoenix 6-7. You are not alone. Follow my instructions exactly. I will guide you to safety. Trust me." Trust. That word alone was a lifeline. Alex nodded, though she could not see him. He had no choice. Every instinct told him to doubt, to question the impossibility, to brace for some cruel trick, but survival demanded obedience. The voice was his tether, the only thing keeping him from spiraling into the desert below. The F-22 pilots maneuvered closer, protective, skeptical, but ready to act. One muttered into his headset, barely above a whisper, is it really her?" "Don't question it," another said, jaw tight. "Just follow the comms." Emma, Phoenix 6-7, adjusted her position behind a jagged rock ridge in the desert. She calculated, recalculated, and then recalculated again. Every movement of Alex's plane, every second of descent, every gust of wind could make the difference between life and death. Her hands hovered over the transmitter, sending instructions like a conductor directing an orchestra of chaos. Throttle at 70%. Bank 15 degrees right. Maintain altitude, she ordered. Her voice, steady and confident, betrayed none of the years spent in isolation, the endless nights surviving, the constant vigilance that had hardened her into the soldier she had become. Alex's hands obeyed. He felt the plane respond to her guidance, almost as if the years of training had merged with her survival instincts. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the descent stabilized. The burning in his chest didn't disappear, but the terror was muted by a strange, growing trust. He was alive because of her. A woman who should have been gone forever was saving him from a fate worse than death. Below, the desert's terrain stretched endlessly, a mosaic of jagged cliffs, dry riverbeds, and hidden canyons. One wrong move, one miscalculated turn, and the plane would have been smashed into sand and rock. Emma's eyes were sharp, calculating, tracking the stricken aircraft and the F-22 escorts in real time. Years of survival, training, and instinct converged into one purpose. She would not fail. A brief moment of radio silence followed, punctuated only by the groan of metal and the hiss of air. Alex felt the weight of every life aboard his plane pressing on his shoulders. 1 second of hesitation, one slip of judgment could erase everything. And then the voice returned, cutting through the tension like lightning. "Focus, Captain. You're approaching critical altitude. Prepare for minor adjustments. Wind shear ahead. Execute with precision. I'm counting on you." The name, the call sign, echoed in his ears. Phoenix 6-7. It was more than a name. It was a legend, a symbol of skill, courage, and the impossible. Every memory he had of her training sessions, every story of her daring maneuvers, now collided with the stark reality that she was alive and guiding him to safety. The F-22 pilots flanking him tensed. The airspace, usually routine, was now a crucible of history, survival, and astonishment. One of them, a young pilot named Lieutenant Harris, spoke under his breath. "I can't believe it. She's alive. But how?" Emma's voice cut across the comms with deadly precision. "Do not question it. Adjust your angle 30 degrees left. Smooth, controlled. Breathe. You are alive, Captain Monroe. I will get you home." The desert below seemed to blur as Alex executed her commands. The plane responded with mechanical obedience, yet it was more than machines at work. It was the synergy of trust, skill, and sheer willpower. Emma had become the unseen force controlling the outcome of this near-apocalyptic flight, and every instruction she gave carried the weight of survival, honed through 5 years of solitude, danger, and relentless preparation. The F-22 pilots began whispering amongst themselves, not taking their eyes off the stricken aircraft. "She must have survived the crash," one said. "But how? She's supposed to be dead." Emma ignored the chatter. Her focus was on the pilot, the aircraft, and the moment stretching thin between life and death. The radio crackled again. "Captain, minor altitude adjustment, 20 feet. Steady, steady." Alex's fingers clamped on the yoke. The pain in his chest pulsed, but the terror was tempered by the clarity of her voice. He moved as if possessed, a marionette guided by invisible strings, each pull precise, deliberate, saving him from the void. And with every command followed, every adjustment executed, a fragile thread of hope grew stronger. But as the plane steadied, a shadow appeared on radar, a subtle blip moving faster than expected, unidentified, unmarked. Emma's eyes narrowed. She had anticipated many things, but this was unexpected. Someone or something was watching. Her pulse quickened. The danger had multiplied, layered over the existing life-and-death struggle. The F-22s noticed too, tightening formation, engines whining in readiness for intercept. Whispers of urgency spread through the comms. "Unknown vector approaching. Could be hostile. Stay alert." Emma's mind raced. She couldn't afford to be distracted. The pilot in her charge relied on her. The F-22s were backups, guardians, yet the new threat loomed like a dark specter over the entire mission. Her hands moved deftly over her transmitter, calculating, analyzing, preparing contingency after contingency. "Captain Monroe," she said, calm but commanding, "do not be alarmed by the unknown blip. Continue as directed. Maintain control. We will handle this." Alex, struggling to comprehend the impossible, being alive, guided by a woman officially dead, facing an unseen threat, simply nodded. He could do nothing else but trust the voice that had just pulled him from the edge of death. Every second stretched into eternity. Engines roared, the desert rushed past, and the unknown shadow on radar crept closer. The F-22s adjusted, forming a defensive perimeter. Emma's voice remained a constant beacon, precise, unwavering, almost supernatural in its authority. She was Phoenix 6-7, and the impossible had become reality. And then, for the first time, the impossible became terrifyingly real. The unidentified blip accelerated, approaching the trajectory of the stricken aircraft. Emma's pulse spiked. Someone, or something, was about to interfere. The world below, the desert, the mountains, and the open sky were about to witness a confrontation that would change everything. She spoke into the comms, calm but edged with tension. "Hold steady, Captain. This is not a drill. The next few moments will define everything. Trust me, trust yourself." The desert, the sky, and the invisible thread connecting the fallen and the survivor hung suspended. Every life on board, every pilot above, every shadow moving toward them, was now a part of a story that defied explanation. A story no one could have predicted 5 years ago when the world declared Phoenix 6-7 dead. The countdown had begun, and Emma, guiding the chaos with the authority of someone who had stared death in the face and refused to blink, whispered under her breath, "Let's bring them home." The world waited, suspended in disbelief and anticipation, as the impossible prepared to unfold. The sun glared off the desert sands, blinding and relentless, as the stricken aircraft continued its precarious descent. Captain Alex Monroe's arms burned, muscles trembling from the strain, but he followed every word from the impossible voice guiding him. Emma Carter, Phoenix 6-7, tracked him from her hidden vantage, her eyes sharp, calculating. Each movement of the plane, each gust of wind, each shifting shadow on the radar had been anticipated, but the unexpected was already unfolding. High above, F-22s cut through the sky, engines screaming, flanking Alex's aircraft like guardian spirits. Their formation was precise, professional, but the tension in the cockpit was palpable. The lead pilot, Lieutenant Commander Harris, could barely keep his disbelief from his voice. "Do you see this?" he whispered. She's alive. She's guiding him. That's impossible." Another pilot shook his head, voice tight. "Focus. Threats above or below, we don't know yet, but this is real. She's real. Keep him alive." Emma's eyes flicked to the blip on her radar, the unidentified vector that had appeared moments ago. It was moving fast, calculated, deliberate. Whoever or whatever it was, it had been tracking them, lying in wait. Her jaw tightened. She had survived years of isolation and danger, but now, with the pilot's life hanging in the balance, this new threat had to be neutralized before it could interfere. "Captain Monroe," she said into the comms, voice calm, authoritative. "Maintain current altitude. Bank 5 degrees left. Ignore the shadows on your radar. Focus on stabilization. Trust me." Alex obeyed, fingers white-knuckled on the yoke, muscles trembling. Every adjustment was a battle against the aircraft, against his failing body, against the relentless pull of gravity. Yet beneath the terror and physical strain, a strange clarity began to emerge. He realized he wasn't just being guided, he was being protected, lifted by someone who had mastered survival in ways he couldn't even imagine. The desert floor raced up to meet them. Jagged rock formations loomed like jagged teeth, threatening to tear the plane apart with a single miscalculation. Emma's calculations ran at lightning speed. Altitude, angle, wind speed, descent trajectory, every variable accounted for. Her mind worked like a machine, refined and sharpened by 5 years of isolation, training, and survival. F-22s, she said, voice brisk and precise. Form a protective perimeter. 1, 2, 3 o'clock positions. Do not break formation. Threat vector approaching fast. Intercept if necessary. Captain Monroe, continue as instructed. The pilots obeyed instantly. The F-22s shifted, weaving a shield of speed and firepower around the stricken aircraft. Engines screamed, leaving trails of vapor in the thin desert air. Harris's hands moved over his controls like a pianist playing a frantic sonata. "We've got your back, Phoenix. Keep him steady." Emma allowed herself a brief, grim smile. Years of preparation, of surviving in secrecy, had led to this moment. But there was no time to dwell on satisfaction. The unidentified vector was closing. It moved with mechanical precision, no hesitation, no mercy. Emma felt a familiar tightening in her chest, a combination of anticipation, fear, and the cold thrill of danger. "Captain," she said, voice cutting through the static. "Minor adjustment, bank 10 degrees right, hold steady. I'll guide you around the next ridge. Your life depends on this maneuver." Alex executed her commands, muscles screaming in protest. The plane tilted, groaned under stress, but it responded. The descent slowed just enough for him to regain a fragile sense of control. Sweat stung his eyes, vision narrowing, but he trusted her implicitly. He had no choice. Survival depended on it. Below, the desert remained silent, unyielding, oblivious to the drama unfolding above. Every shadow, every heat wave, every ripple of wind became a potential threat or advantage. Emma's eyes flicked between her transmitter, the radar, and the distant horizon. The unknown vector moved faster, calculating, relentless. Whoever, or whatever, it was, they had underestimated Phoenix 6-7. She issued rapid-fire instructions to the F-22s. "Left flank intercept. Maintain altitude. Shield the right. Intercept if necessary. Do not break formation. Captain, stabilize. You are halfway there." The pilots adjusted instantly, weaving an intricate aerial dance designed to shield the vulnerable aircraft from danger. Harris glanced at the lead pilot, disbelief etched on his face. She's directing them all. She's incredible." Emma's mind raced. There were too many unknowns. The pilot's life depended on her, but now she had a new threat to neutralize. The F-22s were skilled, trained, deadly, but even they needed her guidance. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, sharper than the gravity pulling at Alex's plane. Then a sudden movement on radar. The unidentified vector shifted, aggressive now, cutting across the desert sky toward Alex's aircraft. Emma's eyes narrowed. She had predicted many variables, but not this level of audacity. Her fingers tightened on the transmitter. "Captain Monroe," she said, calm but firm, "prepare for evasive maneuvers. You will bank sharply 30 degrees left, then correct to stabilize. Trust me. Follow my lead." Alex's heart raced. He obeyed, hands trembling, muscles screaming. The plane tilted violently, groaned under stress, but held together. The shadow on radar reacted immediately, miscalculating, giving the F-22s the window they needed to intercept. Missiles locked, engines screamed, jets shifted in a lethal ballet. The desert sky had become a battlefield. The tension was electric. The stricken aircraft teetered between life and death, guided by a woman officially dead. The F-22s executed precision maneuvers, shielding the aircraft, intercepting the threat. Emma's voice remained calm, precise, unwavering, cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. Every instruction was a lifeline, every correction a chance to survive. Minutes stretched like hours. Every heartbeat felt like an eternity. Alex could feel the plane responding, stability slowly returning. Sweat poured down his face, chest still burning, but hope, fragile and fierce, began to grow. He realized that survival was no longer just about him. It was about the connection, the trust, and the extraordinary woman guiding him from the shadows. The unidentified vector, frustrated by the skillful coordination of the F-22s and the uncanny precision of Emma's commands, began to retreat, disappearing into the horizon. Emma's eyes flicked to the radar, then back to the desert. The immediate threat had passed, but she knew better than anyone that danger never truly vanished. "Captain Monroe," she said, voice softening slightly but still authoritative, "you're stable. The immediate danger has passed. Adjust altitude gradually. Prepare for controlled descent. Keep focus." Alex exhaled, a shaky but genuine breath. His body still screamed in protest, but the terror that had gripped him moments ago was replaced by awe. He had been saved by someone who should not exist, guided by a voice that defied all reason, shielded by the F-22 guardians above. Emma allowed herself a brief pause. The immediate threat had passed, but the desert was unforgiving, and the unknown was still out there. Years of survival had honed her instincts to perfection, but even she could not predict every variable. The pilot was alive, the F-22s were in position, but the mission was far from over. The chase had ended for now, but the tension remained palpable. The desert stretched endlessly below, the sky roared with engines, and the impossible reality of Phoenix 6-7 guiding a pilot declared dead hung in the air like a charged storm. And then over the comms, Alex's voice, trembling but filled with gratitude, spoke, "Phoenix, you're alive. I can't thank you." Emma's response was calm, unwavering, and edged with the steel of survival. "No thanks. Focus on flying. We're not done yet. The desert is full of surprises, and we still have miles to go." The F-22 pilots tightened formation, engines screaming, eyes scanning for any sign of new threats. The desert had become both a battlefield and a proving ground. And above it all, Phoenix 6-7, alive against all odds, guided the impossible with precision, skill, and a determination forged in isolation and survival. The chase had ended, but the story was far from over. The storm of mystery, survival, and revelation was only beginning. As the desert stretched endlessly below, Emma Carter's mind drifted momentarily to the past, a past she had buried beneath layers of survival, secrecy, and pain. 5 years ago, she had been the rising star of the Air Force, a pilot whose skill and courage were legendary. Her call sign, Phoenix 6-7, was spoken with respect, sometimes awe, in hangars and briefing rooms. Everyone had believed she was untouchable, unstoppable. But fate, it seemed, had a crueler plan. The day of the mission began like any other: clear skies, a meticulously planned training flight over Nevada. Emma had flown hundreds of missions, each one more precise than the last, each maneuver rehearsed to perfection. But the routine of the skis offered no warning for what was to come. The radar blipped, instruments flickered, and then the sudden, violent jolt that changed everything. Her jet had been part of a top-secret testing program, a project shrouded in classified files and whispers. The details of the mission were murky even to those in command. Emma had trusted her team, her aircraft, her own instincts. And yet, one wrong calculation, one mechanical failure, one hidden flaw, and the plane spiraled out of control, crashing into a canyon that seemed too remote, too unreachable to ever reveal its secrets. When she awoke, the world had vanished. The crash had left her injured, dehydrated, and isolated, trapped in a canyon so hidden that no search party could find her. But she was alive. Somehow, against impossible odds, she had survived. Weak, broken, and in pain, she realized that survival alone would not be enough. She had to endure, adapt, and prepare for the day she would return. The canyon was merciless. Sun scorched her skin by day, temperatures plummeted at night. Food and water were scarce, forcing her to ration every morsel, every drop with precision. The injuries she sustained threatened to claim her life before she could even understand what had happened. Muscles atrophied, wounds festered, and yet she refused to surrender. Her will became her weapon. It was during those early days that she discovered the hidden facility. a shadowy structure embedded within the canyon walls, equipped with rudimentary communication tools, medical supplies, and survival gear. It wasn't a prison, at least not entirely. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps a trap. The facility's origin remained a mystery, its operators unknown. But they provided her with the bare minimum, enough to heal, enough to survive. And Emma, Phoenix 6-7, adapted. She transformed despair into determination. She trained relentlessly. Injuries healed, but she didn't stop. Every day she honed her body, pushed her limits, and sharpened her mind. Navigation, communications, hand-to-hand combat, emergency protocols, skills she hadn't needed in routine missions became her lifeline. Her body and mind became instruments of survival, tuned to a precision that few could imagine. Years of solitude, pain, and training transformed her into someone stronger, faster, sharper than she had ever been before. But it wasn't just physical. She had learned patience, observation, and calculation. She became attuned to the desert, the wind, the changing light, the subtle signals of aircraft high above. Every passing jet, every radar pulse became data, information to guide her decisions, to ensure her survival. She had become invisible yet hyper-aware, alone yet connected to a world that had long since written her off as dead. The memory of her family, her friends, the Air Force she had loved, haunted her. Her mother's tear-streaked face, her sister's frantic calls, the empty chairs at award ceremonies, all of it fueled her resolve. She was alive, and she had a purpose beyond mere survival. She had to return not just for herself, but for the world that had thought she was gone. And then came the moment that changed everything. A distant hum of engines, a vibration in the air, a reminder of the skies she once dominated. Emma's heart had leapt. Jets, F-22s slicing through the sky above the desert. Memories of flight surged, mixing with the years of hardship. The cockpit under her hands, the roar of turbines, the clarity of command. She realized she had been waiting for this moment all along. Phoenix 6-7 was ready. Her mind recalibrated instantly. The stricken aircraft, Captain Alex Monroe, was approaching danger, life hanging by a thread. The skills she had honed in isolation, the precision she had cultivated in secrecy, were now vital. She keyed her transmitter, voice steady, commanding, and delivered instructions that defied anyone's imagination. A pilot declared dead 5 years ago was now guiding a man through a near-fatal emergency with a calm authority only experience, pain, and survival could forge. As the aircraft stabilized under her guidance, Emma felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. She was alive, yes, but survival was no longer enough. She had been tested, challenged, and pushed to the brink, and now she had a mission she could no longer ignore. The desert below, the F-22s above, the stricken pilot between life and death, they were all pieces of a puzzle that demanded her skill, precision, and courage. But the past was not fully behind her. The operators of the hidden facility, the secrets of the crash, and the shadowy figures who had watched her all these years were still out there. Their motives, their reach, and their power remained unknown. Emma knew one thing with certainty: her return would not go unnoticed. She was no longer the woman declared dead. She was Phoenix 6-7, the impossible survivor, the unseen guardian, the storm about to reclaim the skis. Her eyes flicked to the horizon where the stricken aircraft teetered. Captain Monroe's life depended on her. Every calculation mattered. Every second counted. And yet, even as she focused on the immediate crisis, she felt the undercurrent of danger, the whisper of secrets yet to be revealed. Her hands moved deftly over the transmitter, issuing rapid-fire instructions to both the pilot and the F-22s flanking him. Minor correction, bank 10 degrees right. Stabilize throttle. Maintain visual. We are halfway there. Stay focused. Alex followed each command, trembling, exhausted, but alive. The fire in his chest was replaced by awe and trust. He realized that he was being guided not just by skill, but by experience forged in unimaginable circumstances. He was alive because she had survived, and because she had chosen to act now. The desert, vast and unyielding, stretched beneath them, indifferent to the drama above. But Emma's eyes were alive with focus, anticipation, and calculation. She was ready to face what came next, because she had survived everything else. And now she had a chance to reclaim her life, rewrite the impossible, and defy death itself. The shadow of the unknown threat remained on radar, creeping closer with deliberate speed. Emma's jaw tightened. Years of preparation, skill, and survival were about to collide with the real world. The chase was far from over. The pilot was alive, the F-22s were in formation, and the desert seemed to hold its breath. Phoenix 6-7, alive against all odds, was ready to act. The impossible had already happened, but the story was far from over. And in the tense, electric sky above the Nevada desert, the storm of revelation, survival, and confrontation was only beginning. Her voice cut through the comms again, calm, unwavering, and commanding. "Captain Monroe, hold steady. The next maneuver will decide everything. Trust me and trust yourself. We are not done yet." And somewhere above the vast desert, the world realized that the woman declared dead 5 years ago had returned, not just alive, but unstoppable. The past had forged her, the present demanded her, and the future would never be the same. The desert stretched endlessly below, a jagged mosaic of rock, sand, and hidden ravines. Captain Alex Monroe's arms burned with fatigue, sweat blurring his vision, and every muscle ached. His chest still flared with pain, but the terrifying unknown had given way to a singular focus: survive. He gripped the yoke, hands trembling, and listened to the voice that had defied every rule of probability. "Captain Monroe, steady now," Phoenix 6-7 instructed, her calm, precise voice cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. "Throttle at 75%. Bank 20 degrees right. Maintain altitude. You're stable. Focus on the landing corridor. I will guide you." Alex followed her instructions with trembling obedience. Every movement of the aircraft was a battle against gravity, physics, and his own weakening body. The plane groaned under stress, instruments flashing warnings, the desert floor rising faster with every heartbeat. And yet, despite the impossible odds, the plane responded. Above them, the F-22s flanked the aircraft like guardian angels. Their engines screamed, forming a protective perimeter that kept the approaching unknown threat at bay. The lead pilot, Lieutenant Commander Harris, maintained a tight grip on his controls, eyes darting between radar screens, the vulnerable aircraft, and the horizon. "She's incredible," he muttered, voice trembling. "I can't believe this is happening." Emma's eyes flicked to the distant mountains, the final approach zone for the stricken aircraft. Every detail mattered: wind currents, altitude, terrain contours, the hidden ridges that could tear the plane apart in an instant. Years of preparation, survival, and training converged into one purpose: bring Captain Monroe down safely, no matter what. "Captain, prepare for minor turbulence ahead," she instructed. "Adjust your bank by 5 degrees left. Glide path correction in 3, 2, 1. Hold steady." Alex's hands obeyed, every muscle straining. The plane dipped, swayed, then stabilized. Relief surged, but he could not allow himself to relax. One miscalculation could erase the fragile thread of survival they had worked so hard to maintain. The F-22s shifted positions, engines screaming in unison, scanning for the unknown vector that had been tracking them. It had retreated for now, but Emma knew it would not remain passive forever. She was prepared. Every contingency had been anticipated, every possible maneuver calculated and ready. The desert approached in breathtaking detail. Sharp ridges jutted out like jagged teeth, dry riverbeds carved deep scars across the terrain, and heat waves shimmered over the sands. Emma's voice cut through the comms, calm but urgent. "Throttle decrease 20%. Descend gradually. Prepare for final approach. Keep steady. You can do this." Alex felt the plane respond, gliding with a fragile grace, teetering on the edge of catastrophe. The landing corridor appeared ahead, narrow and unforgiving. The instruments screamed warnings, but Phoenix 6-7's voice remained unwavering, a lifeline of precision and authority. "Now, Captain, minor correction, bank 3 degrees right. Line up with the corridor. You're clear, trust the trajectory, adjust throttle for deceleration, maintain stability. The desert floor rushed closer. Every second felt like an eternity. The F-22s held formation, engines screaming, wings slicing through the air, a living shield protecting the vulnerable aircraft from the unforgiving terrain and any unforeseen threat. Emma's eyes were sharp, calculating, unwavering. She could see every ridge, every rock, every potential hazard and accounted for it in a heartbeat. Then came a sudden gust of wind, violent and unpredictable. The aircraft shuddered, instruments warning of instability. Alex's hands gripped the controls tighter, knuckles white, body trembling. "Hold steady," Emma commanded. "Compensate for turbulence. Bank 5 degrees left now, steady, steady." The plane responded, inching forward on a razor's edge. Every fiber of Alex's being was focused on following her commands. Survival had become a mechanical precision, a test of endurance, courage, and trust in the impossible. The landing corridor narrowed. Rock faces loomed on either side like walls of a cage. The runway, or what could pass as one in the rugged desert, was only a few hundred meters ahead. Emma's mind raced, calculating speed, angle, glide path, and distance. She instructed with calm authority, her voice the lifeline that kept panic at bay. "Throttle down, gradual deceleration. Line up with the runway center. Minor correction 2 degrees left. Focus. Smooth. You've got this." Alex executed the maneuver flawlessly, or at least as flawlessly as one could under such pressure. The plane touched down, wheels scraping the desert floor, sand and debris flying, metal groaning in protest. Emma's heart raced as she guided the descent with micro-adjustments, keeping the aircraft from tipping or veering off the narrow corridor. The F-22s flanked him, ensuring that no unknown threat approached, their pilots tense and alert, watching history unfold. Every eye in the sky was locked on the fragile miracle landing below. The final moments were a blur of adrenaline. The plane skidded over the uneven ground, rocks tearing at the tires, engines roaring in protest. Phoenix 6-7's commands were relentless, precise, unwavering. "Brake gradually, steady, maintain course, hold now, decelerate fully." And then silence. The plane had stopped, wheels grounded, the engines idled, smoke curling from the desert sands. Captain Alex Monroe sat stunned, chest heaving, body trembling but alive. Every life-threatening second had been survived. Every impossible calculation had worked. And the woman who should not exist had done the impossible, guided a stricken pilot through chaos to safety. Emma allowed herself a small, grim smile. Years of training, survival, and isolation had led to this moment. The impossible had been achieved, but she knew it was only the beginning. The desert held secrets, shadows lurked, and the world above had yet to understand the magnitude of what had occurred. Harris, the lead F-22 pilot, exhaled slowly, eyes wide with awe. She did it. She saved him. The other pilots nodded, engines still whining, formation tight. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a legend reborn, a woman who had defied death, isolation, and the impossible to perform a feat no one else could have. But Emma's mind was already moving forward. The unknown vector that had shadowed them, the years of secrecy, the hidden facility, the unanswered questions, none of it had been resolved. The landing was a victory, yes, but the storm was far from over. She had saved a life, but now she had to navigate the world she had been taken from, a world that believed she was dead. The desert winds whipped around her, scattering sand across the ridge where she watched. Phoenix 6-7 felt the weight of history pressing down, the consequences of her survival hanging like a sword. She had returned, yes, but at what cost? The pilots, the authorities, the families, they would all have questions. Questions she wasn't ready to answer. For now, she allowed herself a brief breath, savoring the moment of triumph. The stricken pilot was alive. The F-22s had protected him, and she, against all odds, had guided them through death itself. Her voice cut through the comms one last time, calm and precise, as the F-22s hovered protectively above the desert. "Captain Monroe, welcome back. You're safe. Hold position. Assistance is inbound. Well done. You survived because you trusted. Remember that." Alex exhaled, trembling, voice hoarse with gratitude and disbelief. "I thank you, Phoenix. You saved me." Emma did not answer immediately. Her gaze swept the horizon, scanning for threats, for shadows, for the remnants of danger still lurking. Years of survival had taught her that victory was always temporary, and the desert, indifferent and relentless, had more stories yet to tell. And somewhere unseen, a shadow observed her. The landing had been successful, yes, but the next chapter, the confrontation with the forces that had hidden her, monitored her, and tested her, was approaching. Phoenix 6-7 had performed the impossible, but the world had not yet caught up to her reality. The desert was silent, save for the faint roar of distant engines. The impossible landing had been achieved. Lives had been saved. Legends had been reborn, but the story was far from over. Emma, Phoenix 6-7, exhaled, eyes fierce and unwavering. The past had forged her, survival had honed her, and the world below would soon have to reckon with her return. The storm was only beginning. The sun was beginning its descent over the Nevada desert, painting the jagged landscape in streaks of gold and crimson. The stricken aircraft, wheels buried in the sand, sat still as emergency vehicles and Air Force support teams began to converge. Captain Alex Monroe staggered out of the cockpit, trembling, chest still burning, every step a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. Behind him, the F-22s continued to hover, their pilots scanning the skies, still in awe of what had just occurred. And then came the voice, the calm, precise, commanding voice that had saved his life. "Captain Monroe, you are clear to step out. Support is inbound. Maintain caution." Alex looked up toward the ridge where the voice had originated. And there she was, Phoenix 6-7, alive. Standing tall, framed by the desert sunset, her eyes steady, gaze unwavering. The world had declared her dead 5 years ago, yet here she was, alive, breathing, and impossibly commanding the skies. Emergency teams froze for a heartbeat, mouths agape, radios crackling with disbelief. News of her survival would spread like wildfire. The woman who had been erased from records, who had been mourned and remembered as a hero lost, was not only alive, she had just orchestrated the impossible rescue of a top-tier Air Force pilot in real time. Alex's legs gave out for a moment and he dropped to one knee. You're real," he gasped, voice trembling. "Phoenix, you saved me." Emma's eyes softened just slightly, the first flicker of human vulnerability in years of hardened survival. "You're alive, Captain," she said, voice still calm but edged with something more. "That's what matters. Everything else can wait." But the world was not waiting. News helicopters appeared on the horizon, military personnel scrambled, and soon cameras, drones, and satellites would all capture her, the impossible survivor, the legend reborn. Emma knew that her life, painstakingly hidden for half a decade, was about to collide violently with the world she had once known. Lieutenant Commander Harris, still in his F-22, watched her with disbelief. She's alive, and she's real. She's Phoenix 6-7. His voice trailed off as if mere words could not contain the enormity of what they were witnessing. The support team approached cautiously, unsure whether to treat her as a threat or a savior. Weapons were lowered slowly, radios still crackling with orders from command centers miles away. Emma remained calm, observing, calculating. She had survived 5 years alone, faced unthinkable danger, and now faced the world again. A world that would be as unpredictable and dangerous as the desert she had conquered. One of the senior officers finally broke the silence. "Ma'am, Phoenix 6-7, is that really you?" His voice was a mix of awe and disbelief, tinged with the professional caution that came from decades in the military. Emma's gaze remained steady. "It is, and I've just ensured a pilot's survival. Everything else can wait." Her tone brooked no argument, no hesitation. Authority radiated from her like a tangible force. Alex, still shaken, approached her. "I don't even know how to begin to thank you," he said, voice raw with emotion. "I trusted your voice. I followed your instructions. You guided me when I had nothing left. Survival isn't about thanks," Emma interrupted gently yet firmly. "It's about execution, precision, and doing what's necessary. You're alive because you trusted me. Remember that." Behind them, the F-22 pilots began to land, engines winding down, helmets removed, faces reflecting a mixture of astonishment and respect. "I've never seen anything like this," Lieutenant Harris murmured, still scanning the desert. "She's legendary, alive, real, and incredible." News crews were now arriving, broadcasting live across the world. Social media feeds lit up in seconds. "Phoenix 6-7 is alive." Air Force pilot saved by woman declared dead for 5 years. Legend returns. Phoenix 6-7 guides stricken pilot to safety. The world would know soon enough. The impossible had been witnessed, documented, and broadcast in real time. Emma's mind, however, was not on fame or recognition. The immediate threat had passed, but the shadow that had been tracking her during the flight remained a concern. Someone, or some organization, had monitored her existence for years. They had known she was alive. They had been waiting. And now, after her spectacular return, they would not remain passive. "Captain Monroe," she said quietly, yet firmly, drawing him aside from the commotion. "I need you to stay alert. This rescue was just the beginning. There are forces at play here that neither of us fully understand yet." Alex's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "The people who watch me survive, who monitored my every move, they've been waiting for this moment. They will make themselves known soon, and they will not be friendly." Emma's gaze swept the horizon, sharp, calculating, and unyielding. "I've survived 5 years in the canyon. I've faced dangers you can't even imagine. But the storm is coming, and we'll have to be ready." A hush fell over the desert as the world slowly realized the magnitude of the moment. Cameras captured every movement, every glance, every calculated step of the woman who had defied death itself. Emma, Phoenix 6-7, had returned from oblivion, orchestrated the impossible, and was now standing before the world. Alex, still trembling, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Phoenix, whatever comes next, I'll follow you. I owe you my life." Emma's eyes softened slightly, the first real warmth in years. "Then stay close, Captain. The world has changed while I was gone, and the forces that kept me hidden, they're about to make themselves known." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the desert. The F-22s hovered protectively, the support teams continued to secure the area, and the first whispers of a global sensation began to spread. Social media, news outlets, and military channels erupted simultaneously. The impossible rescue, executed by a woman declared dead, was now front-page news. And yet Emma's focus remained razor-sharp. The past had forged her, survival had honed her, and the world's eyes now bore down on her. But the real battle was just beginning. The shadow of the unknown, the forces that had hidden her, the secrets of the canyon, and the global stage awaiting her return would test every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage she possessed. She adjusted her stance, scanning the horizon once more. The desert winds whipped through her hair, a reminder of the isolation she had endured, the training she had survived, and the storm she had yet to confront. Phoenix 6-7 was alive. The impossible had been achieved, but the game had only just begun. A sudden crackle over the radio brought her attention back. The shadow had moved again, closer, deliberate, aggressive. Emma's eyes narrowed and her voice cut through the comms with lethal precision. "Prepare. The next phase begins now. Stay alert and trust nothing but your instincts." The desert was silent, yet the tension was electric. The impossible landing was behind them, the rescue complete. But the revelation, the confrontation, The storm that awaited Phoenix 6-7 was only beginning. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the world, unseen eyes watched, waiting, calculating, knowing that the woman declared dead had returned, and that nothing would ever be the same. The world had witnessed a miracle, but the real story, the true test of survival, skill, and courage, was about to unfold. Phoenix 6-7 exhaled, steadying herself. The legend was alive. The impossible had been achieved, and the storm was coming. The desert night settled over Nevada like a velvet shroud, the air still charged with the adrenaline of the day's impossible rescue. Captain Alex Monroe sat beside the stricken aircraft, breathing still shallow, chest aching, but alive, and aware more than ever of the woman who had just saved him. Phoenix 6-7, Emma Carter stood on the ridge above, eyes sharp, scanning the horizon. She knew the victory of the landing was only temporary. The real danger, the forces that had hidden her, monitored her, and tested her, were now making their move. The shadows she had anticipated all these years finally revealed themselves. Dark, unmarked vehicles emerged from hidden desert paths, engines low and stealthy, carrying people trained to kill, surveil, and manipulate. The facility that had held secrets about her survival had never been abandoned entirely. Its operators were still active, and they had come to retrieve what they believed was theirs. But Emma was no longer the woman they could control. She was alive, unstoppable, and aware. Alex instinctively reached for his sidearm, untrained yet ready, trusting her judgment. What do we do?" he asked, voice tight. Emma's gaze swept the approaching vehicles. "Stay calm, Captain. Follow my lead. This is where preparation meets execution. Every skill you've relied on today, every instinct will matter, but I will guide us through this again." The F-22s, still hovering above, adjusted their positions, engines humming with protective force. Emma keyed her transmitter, issuing precise commands. Perimeter formation. Intercept all approach vectors. Do not engage unless authorized. I'll handle the extraction. The desert erupted into a tense standoff. The shadowy forces moved methodically, their intent clear: capture her, eliminate any obstacles, and retrieve secrets buried deep within the canyon's confines. But Emma had anticipated every move. Years of isolation, survival, and tactical training had forged her into a force they could not predict. Alex watched awestruck as she directed the F-22s with the precision of a battlefield commander. "They're not just trying to kill us," she explained. "They're testing us, seeing how we respond. Every reaction is measured, every hesitation counted. They've underestimated me as they always have." The first wave of vehicles advanced, their headlights cutting through the desert night. Emma moved with grace and lethal precision, issuing instructions that orchestrated the F-22s like a symphony of controlled chaos. "Left flank intercept, non-lethal if possible. Cover all escape routes. Captain, move to cover behind the ridge. Trust me." Alex obeyed, diving behind a jagged boulder, heart hammering in his chest. He had survived the plane's descent, the impossible landing, and now this. A calculated, tense confrontation in the desert, facing enemies who knew him only as collateral. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the terrain, swift and silent. Emma's voice cut through the static with deadly calm. "Engage neutralization protocols. Maintain distance non-lethal. Disable their approach. We do not fight for vengeance. We fight for survival." The F-22s executed precision maneuvers, creating barriers of force between the approaching operatives and the ridge. Smoke, dust, and sand erupted, obscuring the desert night. The enemy advanced cautiously, aware that they were now facing a woman who had been declared dead but was undeniably alive, prepared, and dangerous. Emma's mind raced through every contingency. Years in isolation had taught her to anticipate, improvise, and dominate. She knew their patterns, their training, their intentions. With each passing second, she calculated the angles, the risks, the moments of advantage. And she would not allow her survival, and the life she had just saved, to be compromised. "Captain Monroe," she said quietly, "watch the shadows. One wrong move, one hesitation, and it's over. But trust me, I will not fail." He nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins, the weight of everything that had happened that day pressing on him. He had trusted her in the skis, and now he would trust her on the ground. Every life depended on it. The enemy vehicle slowed, uncertain. They had expected a woman weakened by years of isolation, yet before them stood a figure whose presence radiated power, precision, and control. Emma's eyes narrowed, and with a calm command, she signaled the F-22s to advance in strategic sweeps, cutting off escape routes and isolating the operatives. Then she moved. Swift, precise, and silent, she descended from the ridge, taking positions that allowed her to neutralize threats without unnecessary casualties. Years of survival training, combat tactics, and psychological discipline converged into perfect execution. Every move calculated, every breath controlled. The enemy realized too late that they were facing someone who had survived the impossible. Alex watched, heart racing, as she disabled the first wave of vehicles with precision maneuvers, flipping vehicles, disabling engines, and creating barriers without firing a single shot. Her presence was magnetic, terrifying, commanding respect and fear simultaneously. The operatives regrouped, but Emma anticipated every move. "They're coordinated," she muttered under her breath, voice steady. "But coordination without unpredictability is nothing. We control this battlefield." With a sudden burst of speed, she disarmed and incapacitated key threats, her movements fluid, lethal, yet controlled. The desert night erupted in sand, smoke, and tension. Alex realized that survival was no longer about following instructions. He was witnessing mastery, decades of preparation, survival instincts, and precision combined into a single force. Phoenix 6-7. Minutes passed like hours. The remaining operatives, recognizing defeat, began to retreat. The desert fell silent once more, save for the distant hum of the F-22s overhead and the wind through the jagged canyon. Emma stood tall, scanning the horizon. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but she knew this was not the end. The shadow had been revealed, but its power and influence stretched further than anyone could comprehend. Alex approached her, trembling with awe and exhaustion. You're incredible," he whispered. "I've never seen anything like that." Emma's eyes softened briefly. "It's not about being incredible," she said quietly, voice calm but heavy with experience. "It's about surviving. And right now, survival depends on preparation, calculation, and action. Today we survived, tomorrow we prepare." The world beyond the desert would soon know. Social media, military channels, and global news feeds were already erupting with the story. Phoenix 6-7 alive, legend returns, pilot saved by woman declared dead for 5 years. But Emma knew that recognition was secondary. The real challenge, understanding who had been watching, why, and how to prevent them from reclaiming her, was just beginning. She turned to Alex. "We've survived the impossible today, but this is only the beginning. They've been waiting for me, and now that I'm back, they will act." Alex swallowed, realizing that the woman who had saved his life was not just a pilot. She was a strategist, a survivor, and a force of nature. "Then we face them," he said, voice steady despite exhaustion. "Together." Emma allowed herself the smallest, almost imperceptible smile. Trust had been earned in the skis, forged in the impossible landing, and now tested on the ground. "Together," she repeated. The desert night stretched endlessly, but Phoenix 6-7's presence radiated certainty, control, and unbreakable resolve. The shadows may have come, the world may have watched, and the impossible may have been achieved, but the story was far from over. Above them, the F-22s rotated slowly, a protective halo of steel and precision. The desert winds whispered secrets of survival, danger, and resilience. Phoenix 6-7, alive against all odds, had returned to the world, but this time she would not be silent. The storm had arrived. And for the first time in 5 years, Emma Carter, Phoenix 6-7, felt the full weight of what she had survived, and the power of what she could now control. The world would never forget her. The impossible had not only been survived, it had been mastered. And the legend was alive. To unleash had only just begun.